Welcome to the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust meeting of February 9th, 2005. It's 9 a.m. We're at Memorial Hall and Town Hall.
It's
May 9th.
It's May 9th. It's May.
You said February.
February. I did a time warp. May 9th. It is May 9th.
We're way ahead of schedule.
I heard May. Yeah.
Having more coffee here. All right. The meeting is being recorded and broadcast by Westborough TV. So thank you. Calling the meeting to order, and the first agenda item is to review the WDA concepts for 6 Beach Street. And then we'll talk a little bit about the report on the High Street extension that was presented at the last meeting. So Crystal or Michael, whoever, if you can come forward, introduce yourselves, name and...
Hi. Oh, wow, it's loud. Crystal Ford, landscape designer with WDA. So can we make that a little bigger or no? So you guys can see
Yeah, we
here.
can see
here.
here.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't
You
know
can
there was
see
a
there.
screen. All right. So we'll start with concept A. This is 6 Beach Street. We start with the entrance coming off of Beach Street, going up, allowing for 5 duplexes. Each one is 2 units, so it's 10 units total. Square footage about 1,400 square feet, so kind of like 7 and 7 on each floor for each unit. This allows for 25 parking spaces, including a van, ADA accessible parking space, as well as a regular ADA. We are trying to keep, keep as many of the trees that are, large and healthy as possible. This one takes out a few down towards the bottom, towards the first 2. This one's more, the parking is right in front of the houses, so it's very more personal and private. The fire truck can turn around in the cul-de-sac around right at the end, which also allows for 2 possible locations for dumpsters. With this design, you also have areas for the community mailboxes right on kind of the islands up in the top between the handicapped and the first 2 units, first 2 dwellings. You have some green space, which could also be used as a recreation area right after the first 2 units. It complies with the setbacks, doing 15 on each side. On the rear, we have 30, and in the front, we have 25. And you'll be tying into the sewer and water along Beach Street for this. But this one it's pretty comfortable. It just, you use a lot of space for that turnaround, but it's that one.
Okay, questions? Well, we have this one up.
So from
Go ahead.
way back
Alan.
when we met with the Business One Stop about original concepts for this project, the fire department stated that if we were going multi-unit to the back of the property, that we needed a fire hydrant. I forget if it was at least 25 or 30 feet off the road. So that would need to be placed, somewhere, maybe near the mailbox,
Okay.
where you have the mailbox on this design, but in each design, we would need to indicate that that was there. So that was my first comment. And then my other comment is, so that's for all 3. My other comment generally for all 3 designs was the level of density. The property is in a historic district, and a characteristic of the historic district is a mix. It's predominantly single family with some multifamily.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if the neighborhood would be more comfortable if this, we start sharing these designs out and have a community meeting, if having a mix of single family
In it?
and duplex in it. I think that's something we need to discuss before you go redesigning. It's something we need to discuss and sort of set. I mean, the higher the density, the more cost effective the project is, right?
Right.
And yes, if we can get 12 units on High Street, and 18 units here. We sort of hit that 30 unit threshold for the state funding, but we're dealing with that anyways. But I have a general concern about the density, and I think it'd be nice to have a little more green space and recreation space in the designs, but that'll be something we'll need to discuss. Because in this layout, I mean, the cul-de-sac seems like that's a lot of pavement.
Right.
That doesn't, add a lot of value. If there was a way to do a T there and have open field for more recreation space, that might be an alternative there.
Okay.
And provide a place for not only the dumpster, but snow storage.
Right.
Other comments?
I'm good. I think Alan covered everything I could think of.
Okay.
My question was, who are we trying to target with this?
Well, obviously, since everything right now, we're hoping to be able to make affordable,
Yep.
okay? Although the option is, if depending on the numbers, some could be market rate on both properties. Because we're looking at this as one large project between High Street and here. But obviously, low to moderate income. Now, given the relatively smaller sizes of these units, we would expect to attract both young individuals, starter families, starter homes, as well as, because it's nicely located downtown, the units are smaller. We are looking at a condo model for these. It might be attractive to seniors who they want to have a smaller unit with lower cost, et cetera, but they don't want to be doing all the yard work and shoveling and things like that.
Yeah, I guess, okay.
So I guess it really addresses a variety of
Just about everybody.
Yeah, well, I mean,
yeah, except for mid-size, 3 kids and
Yeah, it's not
mid-size families.
not going to work well for that. But
we've talked about this being a mix of family housing, so it'd be starter homes and senior housing. And we can, so long as we don't prevent individuals from under 18 being primary residents, we can age restrict for senior at 55 as well. So we don't have to go to 62. And so I think, the mix of senior housing, we also talked about potentially having one or two fully ADA units as well in the mix. I think we're at the point where we need to have that discussion and say, what, based on the data we have, based on the housing production plan and the census data, where do we think the need is? What mix do we want? Obviously for the 80, fully ADA units and senior housing, single floor living's preferred, because then you have to do, have less worry about mobility with stairs and such. So I think we need to sort of come up with what mix we want to see, or some alternatives we want to consider, and our preference, and we can build that into the RFP as well. I mean, we could say, I expect that with the RFP we will have 2 concepts for each property from a layout standpoint. We may have a preference, but that'll provide guidance to what people propose, and then we can, also even on the economics, we can say, we can indicate a preference to have, one fully ADA unit each property. We can have a preference for specific mix of family versus senior housing. Do we want to set aside anything specific to veteran preference? If you look at our current affordable housing bylaws, veteran preference is a component of it. So we can use that as a guide and give the bidders some flexibility in making the economics work. The other thing we can do with the RFP is say, you know, our strongest preference is 100% affordable, but there's a lesser preference if it's 60% affordable and 40% moderate at 120,
Okay.
right?
Are
And
we gonna come
play
up with
that.
some type of scoring matrix when we
Yeah,
get
oh, yeah.
into that? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
The
we
RFP.
actually have a very good template RFP to use. It's the matrix of what we want as far as
Got it.
let,
We're not at that point yet, though.
disadvantageous,
Right.
advantageous, or
Advantageous.
highly advantageous
Okay.
for that. And so some of that can come to play as so as I look at the design, okay, I never thought of 18, that, I don't want to, I don't
That's the
want
next
to,
one.
I don't want the spoiler alert, but, I think
yeah.
we can discuss that, and that'll, that might generate the mix, right? So if we are gonna say senior housing and we want single floor, given the footprint, it means probably replacing a duplex with a single floor unit. Do we want all of the single family homes to be senior or ADA, or do we want a starter home in that style as well? And that's the mix of the duplex and the one stories that we
Right.
might play with.
Possibly one of our next steps is to create some kind of model grid of what are our
Yeah.
options, interests, et cetera, as far as these various options that we have.
But I'm impressed. I'm impressed with the creativity.
Yeah, it looks great.
In the
Yeah.
designs and
Thank you.
the thought process around them. So we'll let you.
We're not trying to throw darts.
Oh, no, you're good.
We're
I'm
throwing
taking notes. I'm
compliments
taking
also.
notes here. I wanna make you guys,
Well done, Crystal. Should we move on?
the
A
next-
lot of these, I think,
Yeah.
questions are gonna be.
So this is the one that he was talking about with 18 units. So you have 9 duplexes, allows for 44 parking spaces, including the van accessible and, ADA accessible parking spaces. Same thing with the community mailboxes, dumpster location, out in the fire truck turnaround. The difference is this one is more up towards the top, is more of a garden style, I guess you call it, where the parking has a little bit of distance up towards the top from a couple of the units, which you would have walkways going towards them. I think the farthest one might be, I think it's 80, possibly 80 feet, possibly a little bit more. The fire truck turnaround, this is one of like a Y design. So you do get more green space. But this is to show kind of like, okay, what can we do? How many could you actually fit? Not that this is something plausible for you guys, but it's just to really demonstrate that, kind of like max out the property. So, that's pretty
These all
clear.
be 6-story high.
The 6-story high, and a couple of floors, just fit as many as we can in there. All 2-floor, same thing, the same square footage and footprint right now, Same thing, we're trying to save some trees, some where the first design had a green space, kind of in the middle. That's where we added 2 more. You could add 2 more buildings there. That gets rid of that green space, unfortunately, but you could always take them out, so there's gonna be, there's play with all of these.
Any issues here with infiltration because of the amount of, I don't know whether this is actually has more
Impervious.
pavement
Yeah.
versus the previous one.
Have a proposed
It's hard
infiltration
to,
system that
hard
would
to
go
tell.
underneath
Maybe,
the
maybe
road.
not, actually.
Explain that. Right.
It does.
Right.
It does just because there's more parking
Yeah, hi,
spaces.
Michael Grossworth with WDA. Yeah, I think this one as opposed to the first one, which had some more open green space where you can drain into.
Right.
This one will probably have the infiltration under the pavement.
Would have infiltration
Under the pavement.
under the pavement.
Yeah.
It's marked
Yeah.
sort
Is
of by
it-
the
It's
entrance.
in the entryway.
Yeah, there's not as much
Okay.
large expanses of green area here. There's a lot of green space, but it's kind of broken up. So to try and get something cohesive through there would be tough. So more than likely it would be under the pavement.
Okay.
And the location of that could vary. It could move up, wherever it deemed fit.
And so, for me, I do find this interesting as a layout. Again, I'm worried about the density. The big maple tree is one of the ones that's coming out.
Large maple.
That would be a concern, but it's sort of a concept and a layout, potentially at a lower density, this this type of pathway, this type of pathway might work pretty well. And if we selected down and this became, 14 units, then we lose some of the need for parking, can still have sort of that truck turnaround area, some additional green space,
Right.
things of that nature. So this is a good start for a different feel.
I think that's what the
That
next one
parking
looks like.
lot up towards the back where the fire truck turnaround is, most of that is visitor parking. Most of the parking is for the dwellings are located in front. So I think the next concept also has where the fire truck turnaround has like permeable pavers. So it's like there's options to add a little bit more,
Yeah.
just, food for thought.
Mark, did you?
No, I was just saying that the next concept, like Crystal just said, is similar to concept B, but,
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
so it might be more what you're looking for, or, I don't know what
Yeah.
you're looking for, Alan, I don't want to speak for you, but,
Well, no, it's
yeah,
just, I mean, this is food for thought, right? This
Right.
is
Yeah.
to get us started and think where we want to go and how we might want to refine, one, two, or three, or all three for concepts that we would share with potential developers.
yeah, I feel like this is too much for that site, but, I do want to create as many units as we can. So.
Yeah, that's my issue here is that it seems really, really packed. And also it doesn't seem, what I liked about the first one is that there's a lot of playable area.
Right.
When I'm thinking, and that's why I asked about the question of who are we trying to target here? Because if we're talking about families with small children, you want to think about safety in terms of children playing outside. And this particular concept, the second concept, seems more like a parking lot to me, where the other one has more playable green space that's community centered. And also that cul-de-sac does allow for bikes. You can it's like a really good bike riding situation for kids to go around and around and around the circle. So I just think that allows for that. Whereas the second one, biking around that would be very difficult for a child. So
Yeah. Good.
I think in general, in all three, we are not looking at any through traffic. We're not doing developments that have through traffic, which is good.
Yeah.
Because that tends to, in neighborhoods, people are aware, the people entering here are going to be mostly residents,
Right.
although visitors. And that generally people are more conscientious of kids playing.
yeah.
But should we move on? Or you have questions?
I would just say on C again, it is a less dense layout. If we wanted,
Oh, we're already on there.
oh yeah,
haven't
we
moved on to C.
sorry.
Please
haven't
move on to
moved.
C.
Are we on to
Yeah,
C?
I'm-
Yeah,
Moving
move on
on.
to C.
And then it continue.
Always a man ahead of his time.
And that should say
Okay,
C,
so
not concept 2 at the bottom. My apologies for that.
That's-
So this one is 6 duplexes, 12 units. Though the road is extended almost as if it was going to cut through, but I know that was kind of denied, which gives you, but it's short enough length that the fire truck can turn around and back into the fire truck turn around and come out. There's the recreation area. You're saving the trees here. The parking is more personal, and with the dwellings being right in front. Where the fire truck turnaround is where there'd be some visitor parking, 1 space per unit, basically. You have the community mailboxes and dumpster locations. You have 2 different sites where you could add those. Same thing, we're tying into the streets. And in this one, you might need the infiltration system, but you could also, I put an infiltration area in that green space. It could be used as that. So that area has like a multi-purpose use. But this one, it saves most of the trees, and it's almost like a medium amount of units there that you could play with. Pretty simple.
And parking is right in front.
Right in front. Right in front.
I generally prefer the parking close to the units, because
Yeah.
that gives more flexibility on, who's comfortable. And I know we think about walking distance when we're talking about seniors, but then again, a mom coming back from the grocery store with
Or
you know,
dad.
or dad from the grocery store with a kid and the stroller and the bags and the boxes, right?
Yeah.
Having the parking closer is better as well. And I like this too, because, if, for example, the two buildings up front, one was single family, which is slightly smaller footprint, and one's a duplex, that's 11 units. We do that with like the 5-6 building and back, make that a single family and drop to 7-8. We'd go down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'd go down to 9 units, I think. And then we'd have green space at the very end of the driveway,
Right.
towards the apartments, and you could lose those parking spots as well. So you'd have a playable field, right, for soccer, lacrosse, whatever the kids want to do. And you could reduce the number of visitor spots, provide more snow storage there with the dumpster, et cetera. So this is a good layout, and there's a good spot for the fire hydrant
Takes all the boxes.
by the mailbox.
Okay.
So, and I'll say that I like that in all of the designs, the setbacks have been met and allow for landscaping.
Privacy.
Privacy
for
gives you
privacy.
that, it gives you that buffer.
And also,
from
smart
neighbors.
landscaping mitigates the potential feel of impact of density
Right.
on the neighborhood as well.
Right. It does protect the neighbors,
Yeah.
you know,
Do you know
from,
that?
yeah.
Say that?
because we have a
So
lot
the front-
towards the back, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's at least 4 neighbors in the back, 1 to the right, and then
Changing it to
yeah.
front.
another 4 to the left.
Right.
So we know, just to be clear, that the actual code required bylaw building setback is actually 50 feet, but since this is an affordable housing,
Right.
probably can take a little liberty, so that's what we stuck with 25.
Okay.
The front.
Okay. All right, I think we should take this. I would recommend that maybe one of our next steps, in a working group, is to create if you will, a couple of, I don't want to say models, but schedules of what we would like to see as far as mixes, what we think might be reasonable, attractive, and viable amongst, these designs, and so that we can then discuss it possibly at our next meeting. I know, Hank.
Should we send feedback in writing to Kristen again? So
We
that she
we
coordinate with the
can.
group?
I mean, if people have comments where they prefer something, or, it would be helpful if you could say, here are some priorities. Like, I think ADA is important. We should have at least one, maybe 2. You can also comment on Beach Street, since we're looking at this as a combined development. What you think as far as single story for seniors, and any other comments you may have. So, and you can do it by design.
Right.
What you like, what you don't like, if it's too dense, not dense enough, et cetera. So I really think now that we have concepts for both places, we can look at it a little bit as a whole, because I don't think the distance, it's not like we're looking at geographic, large splits, if you will,
Right.
or large, so a senior would be almost as close to downtown at High Street as they would here. Here's a little closer. So we may want to, if we're going to do more senior housing, we
Right.
may want to place it in Beach
Right.
versus High Street, which is a little farther to walk. It's not as convenient, whereas this is, you
It's
can get
right
over
there.
to the new senior center, you can get to, stores right downtown, very, in very easily walkable distance.
Yeah.
So anyhow, any questions on that? If you can get that back, and Kristen just sent out a reminder in 2 weeks if we haven't gotten anything back.
Okay.
Okay.
And thank you.
All right, moving on, we had, last week.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you very much.
That looks great. Last week, Kristen, you get feedback from,
Yep, that's in the.
It's in the packet.
Four different concepts, what people mentioned.
oh, okay, yeah. Trying to recall the different,
And just looking through, I think there's enough feedback here that the working group
that'll
can-
feed into the working group.
So what we already, okay,
Yep.
just processing, I'm good. We did High Street.
No,
Yeah.
these are good, I appreciate
With
people's.
Yes.
Yes,
We just did Beach.
exactly.
Can we get a copy of this
I got there
to
early.
WDA, of this?
The feedback?
It was like-
Yeah, that feedback list.
Because there were more for High Street, right? Four.
Yeah, what we'll do is, we just have some meeting or notes that were collected by Kristen from last time. So what we'll do is we'll get a copy to you. Once again, just some background. I mean, we're still gonna go through this process of trying to schedule out different kinds of units. Okay, do you have any questions for us?
That part? Next part, or do you?
No, that's it. I mean, what we're basically doing is, as we see here and as we've just decided, what we're gonna do is the working group will take in these comments. I'll ask Kristen to get you a copy of the comments, just so, you throw it in the folder, all the other ideas. And, at the next meeting, we should have a little bit more, if you will, refinement on the
And the working group may want to meet with you
yeah.
as well. The goal here is to narrow down the concepts, heading towards issuing an RFP to developers who would, bid on those concepts or some modification of them. I expect as we narrow down the concepts, those are what we'll take to the Conservation Commission, because we know we've got wetlands in the back corner of the property. That's one concern. On Design C is the dumpster in the wetlands. They're too close.
Yeah, pretty sure out of
Okay, yeah.
But I can bring an existing conditions plan so that you
Yeah,
can
so-
compare, absolutely.
Well, actually, the wetlands are on High Street, so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not
sure.
It's not beach, right, so not worried
Pretty
on.
sure we're outside the 100-foot.
Right,
buffer.
and so, and so the goal is for the Conservation Commission to say, given these concepts, yes, you can build within the box, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that the developer still, for High Street, will need to go get an order of conditions. The more preliminary work and approval and agreement we can get that the concepts are valid, the lower the bids will be because the less risk to the developers and the less they're gonna expect to have to spend on lawyers and engineers and stuff. And so we'll work to get the scope and number of the concepts down. We can go to the Conservation Commission, we can go to the Planning Board and start talking to them to get their buy-in. Obviously, when this project goes for the comprehensive permit to the Zoning Board of Appeals, having support of the Planning Board, the Select Board, the Conservation Commission will all help in the process, so.
So we have received, just on the same, although we may be jumping a little bit, we've received the, what do you say, the environmental studies from Ty and Bond for both properties, and I don't think we have nothing popped up that was of significant concern. With that, the survey for, we have resolved, there was one issue about the parcels, because actually Beach Street started out as 5 parcels of land, and there was some question about, is everything,
When we were doing the survey.
yeah,
When our team was putting together the survey and trying to close the lines and get them to coalesce with all the deed descriptions, it wasn't closing. So that's where we had to go and find the missing piece, which we found. So everything with the property is good. So now the line's closed and everything's set.
all right, when would the survey be completed?
I'm pretty sure it's complete.
Excuse me?
I think our survey is complete.
It is
What
complete?
The concepts were drawn on top, trace overlays on top of the completed survey.
Okay, that's fine.
So, yeah, so the survey is underneath, it's stamped by Ken Strom, so yeah, it's done.
And Kristen, you just got the larger
Yeah.
printouts. Great,
Yeah,
thank you so much.
sorry?
Do you need an
Do
existing?
you need a survey? Happy to send you a copy of it.
We should have a copy of it for the
Yeah,
records.
we should have a copy if you can forward
Yeah.
that. We just put it in our archives
Your
and
folder, put your file.
folders and everything. Okay, but thank you so much. This has
Thank
been
you.
very, very
Thank you.
helpful. Let's see how we're doing on time here. We spend a little longer, but some of the
We're moving along.
okay, the next report, 134 Fisher Street. What this is a gentleman by the name of Richard Ricard has owned this property for a while and has been going through various processes of laying out a small house development, the idea being eventually to get to 40 units. He's initially looking at 18, which I think was driven as much by the sewer moratorium and the capacity of what he could he could build for septic with that. With the moratorium lifted, I don't know if that might open up his desire to do all 40 as opposed to 18. I'm going to talk to him and see what his interest is. We did meet with him on the 29th of last month, the end of last month, and reviewed things. So
Ed, he can't do all 40 unless he finds a sending parcel. So he has to gift open space in order to get a density bonus
Okay.
in that zone. It's only zoned for 4 units an acre unless he provides open space. And then the planning board has discretion on the density bonus. So they might say, yeah, you can do 40, or they might say, no, we'll only give you a bonus for 10 more units or something like that. Depends on what parcel he
right.
can acquire. I actually made a suggestion of a parcel, but it's kind of something
I don't know
really
if the parcel where some of the septic was going to be. I don't know, but basically the things are in motion. What I have,
Yeah, I do think he will benefit from the sewer
Oh, yeah.
moratorium and that he's not going to have to put a septic in now.
exactly. So that will
I assume
reduce.
that's his plan.
You're right. His basic challenge right now, because he's gone through the whole permit process. He has design review. I think
He's
he's been a
permitted.
couple of meetings.
He's
He's
fully
permitted.
He's fully permitted.
That's all good. I did call and talk to Shelley Guerin at MHP, Mass Housing partnership, and she was aware of this because of an article maybe a year ago in Community Advocate. So what she's asked, and I said, you know, we're looking basically for funding. How can we drive down the price? So hopefully the money for the savings on the sewer might be something. We're looking at grants once again. You know, they brought up, well, it's only 18 or so. And I reiterated to her, you know, that we've had a problem with smaller developments, but this is critical. She's asked me, and I'm putting together, and I'll talk to Richard again, a summary so that she can then socialize it amongst her colleagues and whoever of what might be available for these kinds of this kind of development. I've also drafted per last meeting's request a letter of support.
So
for-
I think we need
Go
to,
ahead.
to clarify that the development's not planned to be 100% affordable.
Right.
Right, it's permitted at 20%. And so, well, we can connect him with resources with respect, the development is planned to provide supportive housing at both the market rate, for the market rate and the
Correct.
affordable units. And, which is interesting because his thought is to find a master tenant
Right.
for all 18 units.
I explained that
Would then
to show.
give or
Shelley.
provide. So, and that's most likely where his state funding would come from, is because there are programs specifically for supportive housing that are different than the other affordable housing programs. I think the two primary things before us are, one, would we consider a subsidy for him to go from 4 affordable units to 5, which hits the 25% threshold?
Right.
And secondly, would we support his request to the select board and to the DPW to waive building fees? So permit and inspection fees for the 4 or 5 affordable units, as well as utility.
Water sewer hookups.
Water,
or
water and
some
sewer-
kind of
water and
adjustment.
sewer privilege fees for those units as well.
Right, although he would, well, they're gonna count them all together, so it would just be a percentage.
Well, yeah, but they'll
Yeah,
reduce it by
yeah.
the number of, they'll reduce it.
Correct, by
If he has-
number of bedrooms.
If we do arrange a subsidy and he has 5 units, they reduce it by 5 bedrooms.
Right.
So
And everything's one bedroom, so.
I think, I mean, he's permitted, like you said.
Right.
So he would have to go in at least for a de minimis change with the planning board to change from septic to public to town sewer.
Right.
And probably to change the permit to read 25%. I
Well,
don't think you could just,
The permit says he needs 4
Minimum,
units. It doesn't prevent him from doing 5.
yeah, okay, that's fine, but I think he would have to do some type of, at least, presentation to the planning board
Right.
and ask them to approve
It,
it as
it
a,
would be good to modify
I
the,
don't think he would have to, they would decide whether he would have to repost it, and
Oh.
notify abutters and all of that, but I think they would probably, in my opinion, they'd probably just say, yeah, this is a
De minimis.
de minimis change.
okay. And then if it's in the permit, that makes it easier with respect to HLC and certification.
Yeah, I don't
Of the
necessarily,
25%.
like you said, I don't think we have to necessarily change the language of the permit to 25%, but it might be helpful.
We might need it, because
question-
then it's then it's permitted at
Yeah.
25%.
I mean, the question really is if we can get him to go to the 40 units, then he does have to go back in for new permitting.
Right.
But
I'm not sure he's ready to do the 40 units either
And that's
from a, you know,
but I think it makes
from a,
sense if
from a
he's-
project scope
if
and
his-
financing point.
Well, from his long-term, plan there, it makes much more sense for him to do sewer with a stub to expand than to
Right.
Yes.
put it, because his plan, as I recall, was to put in a septic system, and then if he got the 40, he was gonna take the septic system out and then connect all 40.
Yeah.
which
You would
just
have a
seems-
hub,
yeah.
a
Seems-
switch that would be able to go right out to the street.
Yeah,
You know, so you can throw one valve and
yeah, I mean,
go between that. So anyhow, what, so I told Shelley I'll put a packet together, because I do want to talk to Richard first, probably by Monday.
right.
Just so that we can look at grant funding, things like that. Now, you had asked him for a cap rate at our meeting.
Right,
To
so-
understand what we need to.
So
To model out what we might need to subsidize.
Right, so the way we've been modeling our subsidies is we look at the difference between anticipated market rents versus affordable rents and that gap. We look at the cap rate that he's built into the financing plan for the project. That gets him the return on investment he needs to go forward for feasibility. Given that we're only talking one unit, we also, and he's provided the cost of the lottery system. And so we may take that into consideration as well, you know, as we come up with a subsidy amount for that one additional unit.
And he does
But-
have
so-
a proposal from MCO for the lottery.
Right, so, you know, so I would recommend that we take a couple actions today. One, vote to, you know, authorize Ed as chair to draft a letter in support of a waiver of building fees and water and sewer privilege fees for the affordable units, which may be 4 or 5.
4 or 5, that's fine.
And be very specific to that. And secondly, I would move, you know, create a motion that we authorize a working group to, you know, draft and begin negotiation of a subsidy agreement for future consideration by the trustees.
So you want to create that, you have to forgive me, we talked about a working group on HB cottages, was that
Yeah.
already created?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I should have asked this question outside of the
No,
meeting.
no, it's okay. No, it's fine.
All right, so you want to create a working group today for this, or is
For
there already a
140
working group?
134 Fisher Street,
Yeah,
so
to-
really anything that's revolving around that.
Okay,
We've-
that's fine. I just want to make it clear what's already been created and what we're
Yeah.
looking to do.
Normally, we have 3 people, up to 3. We can't do more because of, well, can we do?
Can't do 4.
No, but I mean now,
Our quorum's
correct.
still 4.
We wouldn't have quorum with 3.
Right.
We have 6 currently. So anyhow, Alan, if you want to make a motion and name names if you want to, since you brought up.
So, well, first, I move that the trust authorize Ed Bain as chair of the trust to draft a memo in support of waiver of building fees and water and sewer privilege fees for the 4 or 5 SHI compliant affordable units to be built at the project at 134 Fisher Street.
Second.
Okay. That's a second? Yeah. Mark has second. All those in favor? I have most of the letter already done, but we'll modify it.
Change your letterhead.
We gotta get you the current letterhead.
Huh?
Your
Wrong graphic.
graphic is wrong.
We'll get you the letterhead. Okay.
I didn't get to see that look, but I
I'll read it out.
You can imagine.
You can watch it. You can watch it on
TV.
Westborough
It's
TV,
recorded posterity.
from the Westborough TV site or their world famous YouTube channel.
I gotta give you a hard time about something yet.
So,
Letter.
you know,
Okay.
second motion
motion.
is
Yep.
I move the trustees approve to create a working group to draft a potential subsidy agreement for an additional affordable housing unit for the project at 134 Fisher Street.
Okay, second? Steve, a second? All those in favor?
And if you're interested in being on that working group, let the chair know.
Yeah, let me know.
I'll be happy to do it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk a little later, but I think just because of background, that would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Mark. So Mark has already raised his hand, so he's in. All right, moving down. Any other questions on 134 Fisher? Okay. And the third is really the third part of that. Well, the working group will also deal with engaging MHP and others for any kind of financial subsidies, et cetera, grants that Richard may be able to take advantage of. Okay, moving on. We are running a little late. Rental assistance program. Anything?
Sure. I'll walk through my updates really quickly.
Yeah.
There's nothing to discuss this month for the Westborough Rental System Program wrap-up, pun intended. We may have some stuff to chat about next month. I will advise Kristen and the chair of that. The Homeborough DPA, we're still plowing through the paperwork. I apologize, I'm behind on that. If someone wants to help me with that.
Yeah, with Sarah being
With Sarah being out, that'd be fine, just because the next
done.
week and a half are really busy for me.
Okay.
And then,
All right, Baylor.
Yep.
Um,
well, I can
keep going.
I can do it. I'll hand Baylor over to you. 1830 Lyman Street, the subsidy agreement, what we believe is final, is in the hands of their attorneys.
Donahue. Yeah.
Yep. And so we're waiting for feedback on that. We know that he's anxious to move forward because financing, permitting, all that, for the building permits and stuff, he needs that in place. And Connector Road, we believe we've come to final agreement on the wording of the subsidy agreement. They asked the state to modify an aspect of the regulatory agreement. I expect the state's going to say no. Given what they requested, it's not particularly material, but nevertheless, and that's something they're doing now, which is good. Typically, when you submit your local action unit application, your LIP application, one of the required documents is a redlined version of the regulatory agreement with the state for the units. And typically, the regulatory agreement is written to account for any possible scenario of an affordable unit. So it's written with rental and ownership in it and different contingencies. So the redlining is basically taking things out that don't apply to your project. This is rental, so you redline anything for ownership that meets certain criteria, you redline that out, etc. So they asked for one other change that typically would be beyond the typical red line, so they're working. I believe that's gone off to HLC for review at this point. So that is moving forward. 3 Baylor, I hand it back to Ed.
Okay, on 3
He has
Baylor,
he has show and tell.
I have a show and tell. On 3 Baylor, we, the footings are in. They are working on the piping for water, sewer, et cetera, which they need to get in before they start framing, but hopefully within the next few weeks, they will start the framing. Before I get into this, we did get it's in your packets, okay, there's somewhere in the middle, there's a purchase price calculation that uses the model from EOHLC. We have a copy of it too. I played around with it. They're looking at a sale price of $247,900. based upon current, they have an interest rate of 7.01, which is, they're supposed to be a half percentage point, you know,
Leeway.
beyond on top of the current interest rate as published by, I don't know if it's Mass Housing or EOHL. I think it's EOHLC, but you can link to it anyhow. So that, you know, the numbers drive down to here. If we go to, there's, I don't know if we handed this out, but there was a page. There were four tabs in the document.
I just did the front.
You did the front, right, which is fine. So on the third page, basically the summary is his total project cost is $385,000. The maybe you can send this out if you want, Kristen. Just his, you know, spreadsheet. Yeah, and there's the four there. The projected sale price is the $247,900. And therefore, the subsidy required from the Housing Trust, he calculates to be $137,105. And that does provide him his 10% margin for profit, et cetera, et cetera. We had originally encumbered $172,000, so this is to our benefit, you know, by about $35,000. So that's all good news. So that's the latest he has, and those are, you know, and he also had, you know, individual project costs and things like that, which are all interesting. So that's where we stand with the financing. So we're in good shape there. Just trying to get them to get to other phases. We have I think.
Why don't you walk around, and then
Yeah.
Aiden from the
sure
production
you-
booth can do the reverse shot camera behind us.
That was that face again.
I was able to locate an extremely talented graphic artist who was able to produce, and we had it printed to be hung at our various projects.
Love it.
To,
That's,
you know, advertise.
and that's the right graphic.
It is.
It is.
I should have told him it wasn't just a scare.
I think it conforms
Thank-
to our letterhead.
Yeah, thank you again to Westborough High School and the advanced graphic design class last year that
I
did
know,
that
that's
for us.
why I wanted to make sure it was the right graphic, because
gotta be the right
They
graphic.
did a great job. That's very exciting, thank you
Yeah, I
for
love
showing and telling. Yeah. Oh, you did
I did the graphic.
the
So-
job. Well, it's very nice.
So that trumps your comment earlier. Okay, no, so
Very good
we'll,
job.
Ellen and I will work on getting that posted. We already talked to Mark or emailed with Mark, Kristen did, and we have a place where we can put that up on the corner of the lot so that it's visible.
Kristen will help us because I do believe
Kristen,
we need a
yeah,
permit.
how are you in construction and
Well, I'll talk to the building commissioner about the
permitting
signage-
it and
Signage. Make
signage and
sure we're
everything,
good
to make
for
sure we're in
installing that,
conformance? Yeah, it's 2x4, so anyhow. I think that covers everything there. We have minutes to approve. The only thing I saw was whether we need to, on page 2, before we get to the bottom, the local option, we had gone into the Housing Partnership Committee. I don't know if, we closed that out, we adjourned that portion of the meeting? I'm trying to remember, and whether we
We
voted.
did.
Yeah,
We did, so there should just be a line there at, you know, a time, like 9:33, the meeting of the Housing Partnership Committee was adjourned.
Before
right before the 9:34, because then we went back into the trust meeting.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay. And then the only other thing I had was on page 4, towards the bottom, the third bullet point up, absolute bullet point up. I was interviewed by Westborough
Oh,
Journalism Club.
yes.
We did do that, so. And that's all I had. Any other
Nope.
changes? Okay. I move that we accept the minutes from, let me get the date right. From April 11, 2025,
As amended.
as amended.
Second. Oh, Steve second.
Second, all those in favor? Okay.
And Kristen, if we can have those changes made and sent to Sheila and Christie and the select board so that it's in their packet, because they'll be, the local action unit application is on the agenda for Tuesday at the select board.
Right, we've already
Now-
gotten,
And you've signed the cover sheet,
I signed the LAU, you mean?
the LAU?
Yes,
application?
the LAU signed, Kristen's already sent it to Christie.
Awesome.
We're on top of this.
I know, we're doing our job. It's exciting. We're
You
doing
know, we gotta earn our money.
That's why I have to give him a hard time about,
the dates,
yeah, the dates.
the letterhead.
Future meeting times. One of the things that was brought up, obviously, we chose Friday morning just because people are on different committees and things like that you know, evenings can sometimes be difficult because people are on different boards and things. So I'm opening this up. If, you know, right now we moved it, Steve, you still have a conflict on Thursday morning. You were,
Yeah, originally I did. I can probably make Thursday morning.
Okay.
work.
would evenings be better for people as opposed to mornings? No,
No, I just have a lot of evening meetings, so
you do. How does this fit into your,
I'm flexible. I'm flexible.
Okay.
As long as I schedule it out ahead,
yeah.
I block off the time, I'm
okay,
good.
So does Friday morning work for everyone?
yeah. I know, you know, being retired, Hank being retired, that seems to,
Friday's more ideal for me.
huh?
The Friday morning, the most ideal day for me.
All right, why don't we continue until,
continue.
you know, we'll, once we get we may revisit if, you know,
So
when we get a seventh member,
Yep.
if that's
so
gonna
I
be a
haven't
make or break.
put this in my calendar for the rest of the year.
Good.
But it's the second
Friday of the month,
each month, at 9 a.m.
9 a.m.,
Yes.
9 to 10:30.
9 to 11.
We generally stay on time.
Yeah.
Generally,
Only when Hank is here.
that's true. Because he hits Alan. No. All right, appointment of representative Community Preservation Committee. Sarah had been our rep. I know, Mark, you had expressed an interest in, you know, having been involved with that, being the rep for that.
Yeah, I don't
Or-
want to. I'll defer to anyone else who wants to do it, but I'm the appointed liaison from the select board to that committee, so I don't have to attend their meetings, but I have to report back to the select board. I just as soon, if I'm going to go to the meetings, have a vote, and also I was on the exploratory committee, so I have some familiarity with that. I'm not campaigning. If anyone else wants to do it, I'm the new guy.
Have at it.
Go for it.
I move we nominate Mark
Okay.
Second.
to serve as.
Second. Any discussion?
our
All right,
representative
seeing
on the
no
Community
discussion.
Preservation
All those in favor? So we've gotten that. Okay, issues and correspondence. Actually, we have a couple of items here, one major, others are quick. We have some terms ending. Sheila sent me out a note. Alan, Steve, and myself, our terms will end on the 25th of June. Not on the 25th, on the 30th of June. Sheila said she's going to send out a note.
She did, or at least I got something
But
several
what-
weeks ago.
Right, I know,
And
but
I
then
filled out
she
some form
said
online.
she's going to be sending out something and then follow the link. So,
Yeah, that's what, I
But-
did that already, yeah.
Okay.
did you get a link?
Yeah, this was,
All right, I
Like
didn't.
a
I'll
month
ask her.
ago. This is
Okay,
like a month
so
ago.
you're all right. So
Yeah.
you're
I filled
you're
out the
good.
link
You're
and
done.
hit submit.
Did you get?
I did, but I'll get on it.
We'll check with
Yeah.
with
I didn't
Sheila.
get any feedback from it, but I did submit it, so.
Okay. Just other things.
And you're
third-
saying?
I don't know. It depends if I'm,
Ridiculed more.
ridiculed and slings and arrows of outrageous fortune come my way. Kate and I will have to sit down and have discussion. Anyhow, no. 3112 Townsend Boulevard, which we had expressed that we would be a buyer of last resort, if you will, or the town should be. That a buyer was found for that, so that's become moot. There's the MHP Housing Institute that's coming up June 4th and 5th. I will be attending. Kristen, you're attending. I think Jenny is going to attend. I don't know if she's going to go 1 or 2 days. This is a 2-day program that MHP puts on once a year. It's called the Housing Institute. They have a variety of speakers, et cetera. If you go on their website, you can see it. The trust will reimburse people, but I would look at it and see if it's you went both of us went last year.
There's a small chance I'm out of town if I'm not there.
Okay.
There's
All right.
also, in advance of the Institute, there's an Affordable Housing 101 program. It's about 90 minutes. That'll be held by CHAPA end of May. I'll forward out that invite as well. It covers basic terminology and concepts and rules and, things of that nature. It's a good refresher for us, but it's also good for any member of the community or members of other boards and committees who are interested in the topic or interact on affordable housing issues.
Right. Okay, finally, another thing that has come up that's not on the agenda, but I think under issues and correspondence. There's a firm, Post Road Residential. They're a company that builds residential units. These are multifamily units, multi-story units. They've done, and Post Road is that their, I don't want to say their mission, but their guiding view is that they're building these kinds of luxury, high-end apartment buildings along the I-95 corridor, so the old Post Road
95.
is how they generated their
The
name.
495 corridor.
495.
No,
No,
195.
Route 9, right? Is Post Road?
Well, whatever.
Route 20 is Post Road.
Route 20
Post Road is
Post
20. Anyhow,
So they have a-
they come from Connecticut up through.
I hadn't realized that was where Post Road came from.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
familiar
the
with
old
it.
Post
Yeah.
Road. Anyhow, they've been working with Planning Board, Economic Development Commission, et cetera. We had a meeting, and they had given us some information a while back. What they're looking to do, what they would like to do, is build 2 of these apartment units, probably 200 units each. One on the corner of Milk and Route 9, the north side, and then another on the south side at, I think it's 222 Turnpike Road. So just east of where the bakery is there, to do that. current discussion was that given the inclusionary zoning of the, in our bylaws, they're contending that they cannot make the numbers work for them to get their internal rate of return to 20%, which is their target, with the current affordable units that are required per the zoning bylaw. They've sent me, they've sent me a model. What they've been doing is they had a former model. They said, the model was flawed a bit. There were some assumptions that weren't really correct. So I've gotten a lot of numbers. I've started to work on some things and continuing to do that just to vet out, a model, or to create a model where we understand whether their gross income numbers jive with what their assumptions are in their current model, which generates their internal rate of return. So I'm right in the middle of that, talking to them, working with Tom Montelli is the son. There's Andy Montelli and Tom Montelli, which are the two principals, father and son. And so I'm working with him on getting some of these basic numbers together. And I've already found one issue, which I sent off to Jenny with that. So we're in the middle of that. I'm going to continue to work a little bit more until we have something that we can then come back with. We will probably want to form up a working group, but I think that can wait until next month on that, once we determine.
Doesn't the
Just
zoning allow for them to,
So,
Go ahead.
yeah, the current,
No, Mark started. Go ahead.
well, doesn't the zoning allow for them to buy down, so to speak?
It does.
And
That's one of the things that they had asked for, and they had proposed a 50,000 per unit buy down.
And that's not what the zoning says.
No,
right?
Correct. It's 2 times the difference, I believe.
Yeah, it's-
I have it here. We can look at it afterwards, but
Yeah, it was intentionally,
punitive.
Well,
I mean, not punitive.
yeah, it was a
It was-
challenge.
the preference was to have the units built as affordable, not to make it easy
Right.
for somebody to buy it down.
Punitive's the wrong word.
Because, 50,000 is
Appropriate.
not enough for us to,
Build
I
a
mean,
comparable
we just
unit.
heard 134 on Baylor, and that's, maybe it goes down for multifamilies per unit, but it's certainly more than 50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
In
What-
Baylor,
what-
when we look at the total cost of Baylor, we acquired the land for 48,000.
Yeah.
We're
What
looking at
was the-
135,000
what was
roughly
the
there, their
subsidi-
legal fees.
What was the subsidy for Lyman Street?
Per unit, we're buying, what, 4 or 6? No, how many?
The subsidy at Lyman Street is mid-600s.
But that's for,
And then the
for-
subsidy at 25 Connector Road is 360,000. Because they have different.
that's total.
That's total.
Right, but that's
But-
to gain 5%, so how?
So
if
how
you did
many
the math,
units
that would
are
be
we
pretty
buying? I'm
consistent.
trying to remember.
We added 6 units, I think, at Lyman.
At
So like
Lyman.
100,000 a unit, so that's still double.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
I know it's different.
yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah.
it's different.
But I'm
right?
just trying to figure out what.
The reality, right now, the state, we're doing really well because the statewide, the average subsidy for an affordable housing unit is close to $300,000,
Right.
right?
So this is talking about the buy down.
So and the question is, are they buying down to market rate or are they buying down to moderate income? The current inclusions are very robust, and I'm hearing that it's being seen as a model, as other communities are looking, is where 15% affordable and an average AMI of 70%, and 5% moderate income housing. So those don't go on the SHI.
Yeah, they're the
But
120.
those are capped at 120%
20.
AMI. in line with the state guidelines. So the
That's our,
the the buy down. I think there's a discussion the town needs to have, is the buy down from SHI to moderate, or is it from SHI to market? If it's SHI to market, then there is potentially some discussion about, well, what if they buy down to moderate, which is still slightly lower rent than their market rents.
right.
But there you have flexibility.
Right.
So there is some room for discussion here.
Discussion, yeah,
but
and that's why getting a good model,
is important.
because they don't have, and I sent them a template, and I don't know if they didn't understand or they're, I sent it yesterday. They have been very responsive, that I'll say. And, but is it I forget the name of the company, RKG was their initial consultants to develop the model. And they just plugged one number for their gross income.
So
And as a result, they didn't get that model from, how did RKG determine that gross income? Like, well, you have so many units, 1 bedroom, so many 2 bedrooms, so many 3 bedroom. And they even have things like dens and stuff in some of the units. So I've just said, no, just count up the number of units, what you're gonna charge on average for each size unit. You multiply it all out, add it up, do it both for market and for affordable at 60 units. There are 200 unit buildings at 160 units and 40 units.
right.
And let's see what the numbers come out with. And that way, we can then have some understanding of what flexibility we might have with that. So I'm going to send it back. I sent it yesterday. I got an email back, but it didn't have that filled in. So I'll talk to Tom.
So you'll
Montelli
continue.
again.
You'll continue working on this.
I
so
will
we'll have
continue
an
to work
agenda
on it
item
until I
next
have
month.
something, and then I can send it out once, with any caveats and notes and things like that. And I want them, since this is a negotiation, I want to make sure, okay, we're talking about the same numbers. We agree with the numbers. Now, you may not like if you followed
Well,
our
I'm
zoning.
I'm not clear. Are we proposing that we help them financially? Or, because we don't really have the authority
No.
to
But we
change
don't-
the zoning.
No,
They
no,
would
no.
have
We
to
don't
get
have the
a-
authority to change the zoning. Any
Variance.
buy down would be, it's totally the purview of the planning board.
Right.
No, the planning board, I don't think they can waive the percentage.
But they can
Well,
authorize the buy
They
down.
authorize a buy down.
They can authorize a buy down at 2 times the,
Right.
right, they can't authorize a different buy down.
Right. So that would have to go to ZBA.
Right. So
ZBA
what we,
or
what we
planning.
could do is
but-
help them we could support that buy down in some way.
But we're looking to help make sure the understanding of the financials is accurate, right?
Right, I think that's
And
the
that-
first,
is
and
that-
you
that's
guys
what
are
we're
better at
doing
that than
now.
I am, so.
We're wearing our housing partnership committee hats.
Yes. This is really housing partnership committee work, and should go on the agenda next month.
Yes, it will.
Is that, and then it's, okay, if they are gonna propose a buy down, is there, for us, the question is what they're proposing something that, we would vote to accept or support? Or we would object to, right? So that it merely becomes input into the process with the planning board and the zoning board of appeals.
And Jennifer's in this loop.
Yeah,
as
and
is
that's
Laura.
fine, I just, I'm not, as long as they're not asking us for money for the buy down.
Well,
No.
No,
We wouldn't do that.
they're not looking for any subsidies.
So this is
or
the
anything
housing
like that.
partnership stuff, not the
Yeah, this is-
affordable.
this
got
Not,
it.
not affordable
this is-
housing,
I'm
although
gonna
it
take off that
it
hat.
crossed.
Yeah.
This is us helping the developer
Figure out.
figure out
Got it.
what is workable.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. All right, moving on, since we are a little past 10 here. Once again, on the financials, I've done a second email to, and I assume it would go to the accountant, to move the 201K plus that was authorized at town meeting, the fall town meeting, to get moved over to the trust account. I did get a statement from Rockland Trust showing the end of month numbers for April, and it had not been moved. So I'm just banging on that. I may go down and chat to make sure. I don't know if it's the treasurer collector. Excuse me. Just to get that done, because what I worry about is when we get into June, unlike last year where nothing was transferred, all our bill, or a significant $20,000 worth of our bills from FY24 weren't paid until FY25. So as a result, the movement of funds didn't happen either. So trying to reconcile our cash flows became messy.
So
So,
we had some transition there then.
Yeah.
well, and that's
And I think that's
understandable, but
sorted out.
I want to get things,
I would suggest looping in the treasurer collector, because that position is the technical custodial funds for us.
right,
So-
yeah. And that's, anybody else have any other correspondent issues for discussion? Okay, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. 5-0. What time do we have?